Before we get into the video today, I just want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors, Gnostic TV. Gnostic TV is ancient wisdom reimagined. This is a Netflix for those who are spiritually curious and want a place to go where there is no censorship. I personally am doing a whole series on Gnostic TV called the Esoteric Explorer, where I am providing exclusive content to Gnostic. Gnostic TV is a host to all sorts of different content creators, many of whom are your old favorites. If you would like to check out Gnostic TV, there is a link down in the description box below.
We'll see how this all ties in, because as you and I are talking, my data will start making more sense to me. But a lot of this, after I watched the documentary, now the data makes sense. Okay?
Yes.
With a lot of this.
So you guys, if you have not watched part 1 of Maura Murray, I'm going to link that down in the description box below, because that was almost a 2-hour video that I made going through everything with this case and all the spinning parts, as we say a lot, that are around this case. But if you are familiar with the Maura Murray case, or you've watched other documentaries about it, or there's a podcast about it, then obviously you don't need to watch part 1. I put part 1 up just for the people who are not familiar with this case, which, Jessica, you were not familiar with this case, were you?
I'd never heard of it. No. I'm not familiar. And I look into missing persons cases, but see, I never know that I'm getting a missing persons case, because I'm doing coordinate remote viewing where I'm tasked with some coordinates. Sometimes I never find out what that target was. Okay. But I do get missing people and cold case targets pretty often.
Yeah. And I want to be very clear, guys, we, because this is almost a 20-year-old case, we've talked about this before with like any time, and I think Jessica and I are kind of on the same page when it comes to divination when we're dealing with other people. There are laws of consent. And so, people do have the right to go missing. But from my research that I've done into this case and my own speculation, I don't think that she's alive. I think, and I said that in part 1, I think that she is dead. And so we are dealing with closure for her family, figuring out what happened to her. I think I know what happened. I think I have theories about what happened to her. And I also think there's this term called Occam's razor. Have you heard of this, Jessica? Mm-hmm. Where it's like basically the most likely scenario is probably what happened, right? And we're going to get into all the different theories and what Jessica. So Jessica, do you first want to go ahead and give what I'll throw the pictures, because guys, she sent me last night. She sent me all of her notes to her data. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what you call it. And I was like laying in bed reading through it. I almost got emotional because you hit, and I knew when I was reading it that you had no idea what it is. You were actually like, you were just writing information down. And because I know the case, and this case has haunted me for years now. For some reason, this case has really, I think a lot of people are very haunted by this case. When I was reading your data, I was like, holy shit, she hit it. And I don't even think she knows what it is she hit. So that's when I told you, Maura Murray, go look her up. And you said you watched some stuff this morning. So do you want to go through what you got first? And then we can kind of have a conversation about all the theories that people have and how some make sense and some don't. And what we think is going on with Maura at the time of her disappearance.
Oh, yeah, totally. Okay, so you had given me some coordinates. Okay, and they were 2244. 8877, and that's what you gave me, and it took me a couple days to get around to remote viewing this, because I do a lot of remote viewing and I can only do so much in a day. And so I did this one. I think I just did this yesterday actually. And yeah, so I went in not knowing what this was, and I will go over some of my sensory data, and then I'm going to go over some of my analytic overlay data. And then we're going to talk about that stage 3 drawing I did, which was really interesting. And then we'll go over my stage 4 data. Now, so remote viewing is locating a target that is unknown that I have no idea what it is, and this is coordinate remote viewing. There's different modes of remote viewing. The one that I did for this target specifically was coordinate remote viewing. And I like doing that because you can write everything down. It has a date and a timestamp on it when I did it. And it's all there cut and dry for me to hand in to a detective or the family or whoever's tasking me with these targets. Okay. And like I said, I did not know what this target was. And so I immediately, when I'm remote viewing, I have like charts. I write out ideograms. It's like automatic writing. And I start flooding in, or the matrix, like I'm starting to like get all this information that floods in when I sit down to do these targets. And I just write it down, and there's a place for everything for me to write down. So do you want me to give you like an overview before I get into the data?
One question I have, Jessica, because I hope you don't mind me saying this to our audience. You said that you got very emotional remote viewing this person. You didn't know obviously what it was, but so my question is, and I because I get emotional with this case. This is a very emotional case, and maybe it's because for me, Maura was like 9 months older than me, and so looking back at 2004 when she went missing, knowing what the world was like then without knowing, being that age myself, and how sometimes you blow up when you're in your early 20s. Sometimes things happen and you think that's the end of the world when it's actually not the end of the world, and just knowing the stress that she was under, I can totally understand getting emotional. So when you were remote viewing, are you just given information, or are you viewing the situation through the target's eyes?
Both. All of it. Yeah. And I'm even able to get in and see through if I'm detecting a person in the environment, I'm able to do what we call a deep mind probe. So I'm able to go in there and actually ask them questions and get answers. I mean, I've located missing people like that before who are deceased. And I have to put out a little note here for everybody. I'm going to say 99% of the targets that I've been tasked with missing persons, they were deceased. Okay. So a lot of the people that I am tasked with have died. And a lot of times I am locating, I'm talking to them, asking what happened. I can have them lead me to kind of like the area where their body is, or like landmarks and things like that. Like I can see. So it's a long process. Remote viewing is a process and it's very draining, by the way, super draining, especially when it comes to violent crimes. Okay. And missing children and things like that. I have been asked, when I never went public as being a remote viewer for at least 10 years. And because I'm a Bigfoot field researcher first and foremost, and I was taught remote viewing through that research, okay, from the research that we do. And people would attack me occasionally when I first went public, and they said, "Why are you not finding all these missing people you talk about, these national parks?" I do. Okay, I do. I just don't talk about it publicly. Yeah. And it's so draining, Brice. It's really draining to do things like this.
Well, so, there is, and I'm actually hoping, and there is the family does run a website about Maura, because the family is still looking for closure. And I know that there's been another big site. There's been lots of psychics who work this case. One of them being a big one, Alison Dubois, who the show Medium was about her, and she actually picked up a lot of the same things that Jessica picked, which we're going to get into, what Jessica picked up on. And she said something that she's looking through Maura's eyes. And she was explaining a lot of terror, a lot of fear. And she also, in one of the docuseries they interview her, she actually looks at the camera when they say what happened to her, and she goes, "Are the parents going to?" I kind of just got like a wave of emotion when I said that. Are the parents going to be watching this? Because there is a sensitivity to the fact that this is a human being, and there are family members out there that have to live with the knowledge that they don't know what happened to their sister or their daughter. And the family, through the interviews that I've seen with like the mother actually passed away on Maura's birthday 5 years after her disappearance, which is wild. So the father is the one that's still going strong, trying to get answers for Maura's disappearance. And the family, from what I have seen in their interviews, do accept that she is probably dead. They accept that. They understand that that's probably what happened to her. Again, you guys, there's a huge other theory, especially by James Renner. I was telling Jessica, I just ordered his book, True Crime Addict, How I Lost Myself in the Mysterious Disappearance of Maura Murray. And he is the one that really has this big theory that she ran off to Canada, started a new life in Canada. And I said this in part one. I think I said this in part one. I don't think James Renner is a bad person. I think he just got caught up. He's a father himself, I believe. I think human nature, we want to believe that when someone goes missing, that we want to give them that underdog story of like they conquered whatever it is. They have a new life now. But a lot of people have spoken to experts who specialize in people who disappear willingly. And that is very hard to pull off. It is very hard for someone to pull off disappearing willingly and changing their identity and not having any contact whatsoever with their outside, with the world they knew before. And so I want to put that out there. And you could see with Alison Dubois as well, when they were working with her, just how her face would change, experiencing what Maura would have been experiencing just moments before I believe she was murdered. I think that's what the consensus that you have too, Jessica, is that she was probably murdered. And with that being said, I do plan on sending a link to this video to the family, not for any other reason, just for them. I'm not asking them to come on my channel. I'm not asking I just want to make that very clear. It's not for any type of publicity. I think Jessica, you and me and most of our audience watching as a human being, if we were in their shoes, I would want my sister's body. I would want to be able to put everything to rest and give her whatever type of burial or service that she has not. I want to make that clear too. From what I understand, she has not been legally declared dead yet, which I believe that they've done that strategically. Because I think it's like after 4 years or something, there's like a time period where you can legally declare someone dead, even if you don't know they're dead. I think they've done that in order to keep it so it doesn't get archived, right? To still keep it a missing persons case in hopes that the police will actually do more, which we'll get into the police later because that's a whole other can of worms right there. But yes, I get what you're saying. To make a long story short, Jessica, I totally get we absolute respect to the life that was lost. And to the family and the friends that have suffered that loss and don't have any answers as to what happened to their loved one. And if Jessica's remote viewing can help the family or anybody find closure or find the body, then I think it's fair to say, Jessica, that was what we want to happen in order for them to have that closure that they need for their daughter and for their sister and their friend, So, all right, girl, I'm going to hand it over to you now, and I'm going to put the camera on you and let you just tell the audience what you got.
Okay, so this was a really hard target for me to do. Okay, it didn't start off that way because I didn't know what this was, and so I'm seeing, I'm sensing all this sensory data is coming in. It started off seemingly not terrible, and some of my sensory data included adorned or adored, covered, flighty, amazing, happy. Okay. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be a cool target. It seems pretty happy. And then some more data came in and I got disjointed, breathing, alone, graceful, spinning, lunging, covert. And then I got dragged and abused. Okay. And this is not going to be a super easy thing to talk about today. And I want to be it is very sensitive. And so, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to disclose every single thing that I experienced because it's pretty bad. It's pretty rough. Okay. But I was, so me trying to make sense of some of that data I write down, it's called analytic overlay. And some of the things I wrote were, I was picking up on like jewels. Okay. Like, cause I got adorned. And so I was seeing like jewels and stuff. I don't know. I heard happy wife, happy life. That may have nothing to do with anything, but I wrote that down. And then I heard upside down world. We live in upside down world. And then I picked up on breath work because I was hearing and sensing breathing, and it was like control breathing. And then I heard solemn, like being alone, like solemn. And then I heard checked. And then I was picking up on being athletic, somebody that was super athletic, potentially a dancer. I was even picking up on like ballet or some kind of dancer, some kind of sport. Okay. Where you're.
Well, that goes in. I was like, when you said breath work, I got chills up and down my spine. She was a long distance runner, like one of the top runners in high school. She got scholarships, and a lot of people's, when you said breath work, a lot of people, that's why people think she ran across the Appalachian Mountains in the dead of winter, because she was an athlete. And so she could take in more oxygen running up the mountains, which we'll get into. But when you said breath work, I was like, holy shit. Yeah, she was a very hardcore, like I would say borderline Olympic level athlete. So yeah, very physically fit. So anyway, all right, keep going, girl. Sorry, I was just like, boom. That yeah, she was.
Okay, so I was picking up on someone that was super athletic, and I wrote down, this is what I wrote down, because I'm just putting out anything that comes into my head or I'm sensing. I write it down. I don't discount anything. Okay, so I wrote down dancer, dancing. I even wrote belly dancing. Okay, in ballet. I heard hidden treasure, hidden value, hidden talent. Okay, hidden value. Then my data, this is like my stage 1 and 2 data for the first page that I got. And then it kind of went, the data started changing a little bit. And I actually wrote down the word Muslim. I wrote down dragged down. And then I heard clairaudiently put in her place. And then I heard knocked out. So knocked out. Okay. And I wrote what is called stage 3 data. I wrote down what I thought was a hat with a rose on it, like a flower. But after I went back and analyzed the data, I do believe that is a grave marker. Okay, I think I wrote down a grave marker, and I'm not sure if you have the data to show the audience today, but there's a drawing, and also like a squiggly line, almost looks like a portal or something, or that could represent, like, I'm going to say breath work or something. But I did some sketching. That's just part of remote viewing. You just sketch. Okay, you make a sketch. Okay, so in my stage 4, on my second page of data, once I started the last bit of that data, and I was picking up that somebody was dragged and abused. Okay, well, I hadn't gotten to that part yet, but yeah, I heard put in her place and knocked out. I got very emotional. And actually, there's a place to write that too on the data. And I was crying, upset, devastated, and I was very sad. Okay, for the entire rest of this target that I was in, the session that I was in, I was devastated. Okay, like I couldn't stop crying. And so I heard, okay, some of my sensory data that I was sensing was tempted, and I got like the word temptress. Okay, like temptress, like somebody was being tempted. Released, closed in, and like in the dimensional data, like I felt like I was being closed in a space, like a tight space, and I was closed, and something was shut. Okay, shut, released, closed in, shut, and I started sweating really bad. Or not me personally, okay, but it was almost like I was living through whatever this target was, and I was shut in somewhere. I was very sweaty, and I started smelling this odor. Okay. And it was, and I wrote it down on the paper. It was like sweaty from a performance, like how I grew up dancing in performing arts, and I was a singer and all that stuff. And I played sports too. So it was almost like a locker room smell, or like after you get done with the performance, you've got on like these like polyester tights and suits and everything, like your leotard, and you put on like you're super sweaty. That was what I was experiencing. Was like and I actually wrote down this, like the scent that you get like backstage after everybody's like worked their butts off, and you got that odor. Okay, like sweaty and salty. Okay, so I was feeling like super sweaty and salty, and yeah, and I wrote down powerful, and I was picking up on like, oh gosh, I don't know if I hate talking about this, but I was picking up on like pantyhose, okay, and tights, and I heard sweat equals power, in a trance state. Okay, so I wrote that down. Okay, and then I was picking up on something to do with an initiation. Okay, an initiation, something to do with some secret knowledge. Okay, some secret knowledge. I wrote down something that was below and under and below. I heard under the radar. Something was under the radar. I heard target. I wrote down target, and then I heard make contact. Okay, I heard that clairaudiently. And then whatever this target was very emotional. And then it made me start crying. I got overwhelmed and started crying. I wrote down holding, something was holding. And then I wrote down holder. There was something about secret knowledge. I kept getting this information about ancient secret knowledge. And it was almost like an initiation. And then I wrote down as above, so below. So it almost brings like an occultish element into all of this, okay? Because I did pick up on as above, so below, ancient secret knowledge. And then I heard goodbye. I literally heard somebody say goodbye. And I ended the session right there. I only went to stage 4 on this one because I was so upset and so overwhelmed by the data that I was getting. It did appear that somebody was taken, dragged, put under some abuse of some sort, and ultimately I do not believe that they're still living.
So that a lot of that makes sense to me, especially the beginning when you got happy. So let's just basically recap what had happened to Maura Murray in her life, just so you guys understand kind of the emotional state that she was probably in. Because first and foremost, the big question is, what was she doing on that road in the middle of the night? She was at this point a student at UMass, University of Massachusetts in Amherst. She was 21 years old, very young. She had just transferred from UMass from West Point, and she was like 140, 150 miles away from the school that night. And nobody knew she was going up there. Now I have a theory as to why she was up there. So we got to back up we got to go back to an incident that happened to her at West Point. Now, Maura, from what it seems, and I want to make an apology, guys. Jessica and I are from the South. And so I realized when I listened to the parents and the family speak of her, they're Boston people. And Boston people have very thick New England accents. And they say Maura as Maura. Where in the South, we kind of say more Mara is kind of how we say it. So I don't want to it's no disrespect. That's just our accents are just different. And so, when you hear them say her name, it's more Maura, whereas we might, and I tried to, in the part 1 to say it their way, but as we're talking about this, if we say Mara instead of Maura, that's just our Southern accent, guys. So anyway, with that being said, Maura came from a it seems to be a very, very loving family. Like she was very loved by her, and as you can see, her dad is still fighting to find out information about what happened to his daughter. There were 5 kids. She had an older brother, Fred Jr. She had Julie, Kathleen and Julie. Julie and Laura were around the same age. And then Curtis was the younger brother. So, no, sorry, 4 kids. That's 4, right? That's 5, because that was Fred, Kathleen, Julie, Maura, Curtis. So 5 children. Now, the younger brother, Curtis, was from her mother's second marriage, but they were very, very close. Julie and Maura were the 2 athletes. So they were, and the father, and that's one thing James Renner believes, that the father pushed them too hard, but nobody else claims that. They all say the father was just coaching them. And when the parents divorced, I get that with a dad. That's a good way for a dad to be involved in their child's life, is to coach them and help them with sports. That's a common bond a child would have with a parent. And, and Fred has always said the minute the girls didn't want to run anymore, then that's fine. They didn't have to run anymore. But both Julie and Maura were not only loved running, but were exceptional runners. She had a scholarship to West Point. Y'all, West Point, I mean, they don't just accept anyone. It's a military for our friends watching from other countries. This is a military school. And Julie, the older sister, had already been accepted to West Point. Then Maura got accepted. Well, I'm going to tell you guys, I love to exercise. I'm a hardcore exerciser, but I don't like being told what to do. And I would not last a week at West Point, I don't think. Because you go to college, most universities, you got your schoolwork and stuff, but you're partying, you're kind of exploring your boundaries as a young adult. That's kind of your dumbass dipshit years where you're kind of experimenting with, but I actually think that's really healthy for kids to have that time when they're still kind of young, but they're also maybe making some adult decisions. But in West Point, that's not going to be the case. Like in West Point, you're not going to gain the freshman 15. Like you're on a strict regiment workout, military style. And I think in a lot of ways, Maura did West Point or agreed to accept the scholarship to West Point because it made her family happy. So I do think she was, but that doesn't mean her family were abusive. I think a lot of us do that. And I think by the time she had gone before the disciplinarian committee at West Point like 7 times. And then she actually shoplifted makeup from Fort Knox. Fort Knox is the most secure place in the United States.
Right. They make jokes about that. It's like it's more secure than Fort Knox,
So the fact that she did this, and it was like nail polish or something, and it's not like she couldn't afford for me, it was like, it seemed like one of her friends, they interviewed one of her friends in one of the podcasts I listened to from West Point. And she said that afterwards, she was like, Maura, why'd you do that? She was like, I don't know. But it got her kicked out of West Point, basically. And so I kind of see that as a cry for help. I don't think she wanted to be there anymore. I don't blame her. I just don't think she didn't know how to disentangle herself from that situation. She was a straight A student in high school. She did really well. She was always, so when you start to think for yourself and you're not, I think that, I don't judge her for that, basically. So then she got accepted into UMass, where she changed her major to nursing. Her mother was a nurse, and everything, she made friends really quickly. She had this little group of girlfriends. Everything was all well and good until it was like November 2003. So this is a few months before she disappeared. She got caught using a credit card number from another girl that lived in the dorm at UMass to order food. It was like $79 worth of charges. And so she got brought before a judge, and the judge was like, listen, you're young. It's under $250. You were buying food. It's not like you were buying trips to Disney World. Just pay, if you can pay the money back to the victim. And if you can stay clean for 3 months, we'll take this off your record. Which is really important, because if it was on her record, she would have been charged with credit card fraud and identity theft. So that would affect her getting jobs in the future. That affects a lot. And so I do think she got lucky with this judge. Okay. And she went before the judge in December of 2003. So this is like a couple months before she disappeared. All is well and good until about February 5th of 2004. And y'all, my birthday is February 4th. It's February 4th. I know exactly where I was when all this started, because I just turned 21 myself, So I look back at that. That's what's wild. Like, you look back and know where you were when somebody else around your age was going through what they were going through. Well, February 5th of 2004 is when people kind of mark the beginning of her disappearance, because she had all these part-time jobs. One of them was for a security job at her school. So it wasn't like she was hurting for money. She had jobs. Her family was middle class. Like, they were very supportive. Her stealing had nothing to do with survival. It was obviously something was going on with her. Around 10, she got to her shift at 10:30 at night. Around the first call she gets is from her sister, Kathleen. Now, her sister, Kathleen, had been in and out of rehab for drug and alcohol abuse. And the little brother, Kurt, people have made a big deal about this. Like, her sister must know more, because her sister gets very tight-lipped. And her brother, Curtis, finally came on the Missing Maura Murray podcast and said, no, my sister, Kathleen, has struggled with drugs and alcohol because when she was 19, she was engaged to a man who committed suicide and blamed Kathleen in his suicide letter. So that's why that was what was going on with his sister. It had nothing to do with Maura. But Anyway, Kathleen had been in some rehab facilities. She called Maura. There was some speculation that maybe Kathleen had started drinking again, and Maura was a little upset about it, understandably so. Now, around 12 midnight, her boyfriend Billy Roush, who has been taken off as a suspect, guys, because he was like 1,700 miles away at a military base in Oklahoma. He called her. They had like a 7-minute conversation. That the relationship was not good. He was cheating, and they were young. He was cheating on her. It was long distance. But of course, in Mara's mind, she was going to marry this guy. You know, we've all done that as girls. Come on. Like, we've all dated a bozo that we thought we were going to marry, right? Like, I can fix him. True love will fix him. You know, she was just 21. And I mean, at 41, she probably been like, screw you, dude. Like, whatever. You know, just being a 21-year-old girl, right? So that night, she got really upset after the phone call with Billy, so much so to the point where she was kind of comatose, and the supervisor had to take her home at like 1 o'clock in the morning back to her dorm, and she wouldn't speak, but whenever the supervisor asked her what was going on, she just kept saying, my sister, my sister. So it kind of sounds like it was just two compounding phone calls. I don't think either one of them have to do with what happened, but that's where they started because it was weird. Now, on February 7th, which was that Saturday, her father, Fred, came to the university to visit Maura because they needed to get Maura a new car. Maura's car apparently was just not drivable. The cylinder would smoke, all this kind of stuff. And so Fred had taken $4,000 out of his savings account. He was going to take Maura to some car lots, find a good used car. You know, I understand that. Jessica, you're a parent. Some people have made a big deal out of this. I don't see this as a big deal. I think any parent would want their child to be safe, especially a daughter, to be safe. She's living in Massachusetts. I think Jessica and I would probably be SOL in the winter as two Georgia girls up in Massachusetts, because that is some hard winters that they have to go through with snow and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so she was having to make rounds as a nursing student, driving back and forth to the hospital. The father just literally was like, I need to do what I can to help my daughter out in this situation. I don't see anything weird about this at all. I think if you have the means to get your kid a safe car to drive in, you're going to do it as a parent, you know? And so they went car shopping that day. They didn't find anything, but that night, Fred took Maura and her girlfriend, Katie, out to dinner. Normal. They said it was weird that Katie said they never talked about the car shopping. But again, like, why would they? You know, you're out to dinner with a friend. Like, why are you going to talk? You know, it's, hey, girls, how's classes going? Katie, tell me about how your school's going. What do your parents think? What are you majoring at? That's probably the conversation they were happening. So after that was over, Fred took the girls to a liquor store so they could buy alcohol to go to a dorm party that night. All right. Now, of course, if you're 21, your whole social circle is probably dependent on these parties. There's probably cute boys there, whatever. At 40 or 41, if you had this 3-month probation period, you probably wouldn't be going to any parties. But this is the mind of a young and dumb 21-year-old. Now, the one thing where I questioned Fred is the father had just bought a brand new Toyota. And he was staying at a local hotel, and he let Maura drive his new car to this party and asked her if she would just bring it back. Now, it could be he was just trusting his daughter that she wasn't going to drink, all that kind of stuff. Well, she got to the party with her friend around like 10:30 that night, left the party around 2:30, and then by 3:30, she had an accident in the car. So she had come to what they call a T-stop, where you could turn left or right, but she rammed the car straight into the guardrail. Now, with that being said, the responding officer did not run any sobriety tests on her. We don't know why. No one knows why, because I would think that would be the first thing you would run at 3:30 in the morning with a 21-year-old girl who's been to a dorm party who just drives straight into a guardrail. But for some reason, he didn't do that. She got lucky. But he did file out an incident report. The car was totaled. She went back to her father's hotel. We have on record she talked to Billy, her boyfriend, at like 4:50 a.m., where she was very upset about telling her dad she'd wrecked his car. Anyway, woke up in the morning, told her father, car's wrecked, car's total. He was like, at least you're safe, blah, blah, blah. So that's coming into Sunday. He brings Maura back to the dormitory and says, go Monday morning, pick up the incident report so we can sit on the phone and file the insurance so insurance can cover this together. So now we start to see Maura on the early mornings of February 9th, the day that she disappeared. Just after midnight, her computer showed that she was looking up directions to the Berkshires, to a vacation spot common in New England area, which is in the Appalachian Mountains, the Berkshires. And then at 3:34 a.m., she turns in her nursing homework to her professor. And we see her asleep. Let me look at the timeline here. Then at 1:13 p.m., Maura calls another nursing student, and they found this nursing student, Erin O'Neill. She talks about how Maura, this was the nursing student that she would hitch rides with a lot, and Maura was basically telling her she had a family emergency come up. She was going to be leaving town, and she needed to return some clothes she had borrowed from the student. Erin was like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Just bring it when you get back. But nonetheless, Maura dropped her clothes off in a trash bag at her front door. And then at 1:24 p.m., Maura emailed a work supervisor in the nursing school program, so kind of like a professor, to say that she would be out for a while due to a death in the family. There was no death. But I think I had a few friends that pulled this in college. Like they would, if they wanted to go party for the weekend and they didn't want to do their work, they would just email the professor and be like, there was a death in the family, got to go home. I know a lot of kids do this. So this is not surprising to me. That it's an easy lie. Like it's an easy lie to, so it's a bereavement period. But she also told the professor that she didn't know how long she was going to be gone. So she would let him know when she was coming back. 2:05 p.m., she called around some hotels in Stowe, Vermont, inquiring about hotel prices. 2:18 p.m., she leaves her boyfriend a voicemail saying she would call him later. 3:30 p.m., Maura's car, her beat-up car that she should not be driving, is seen leaving campus. We know at this point that they did close down classes because a snowstorm was coming. Listen, y'all. Listen. If the Yankees are going to close down school because a snowstorm is coming, it's a bad snowstorm. Down here in the South, they can mention that it might perhaps just kind of snow a little bit, and the Piggly Wiggly sells out of bread and water, and people think Jesus is coming back, right? Like these are if a school in New England is closing its doors to a snowstorm, I think that's going to be a pretty big snowstorm that she's driving into, right? Because kids, those Yankees, they know how to handle the snow, don't they, Jessica?
Oh yeah. Listen, I got stuck in the snowpocalypse down here in Atlanta, and I was like 9 months pregnant or 7 months pregnant with my son, and I was stuck. I had a mile to drive, and we got black ice, and I was on the road for like 4 or 5 hours just for like a mile, or it might have been longer than that. I don't remember, but I was super pregnant, and I had to pee. So yeah, I'll never forget that. It's a nightmare down here, y'all.
Yeah, we don't get it. We don't get snow down. I mean, most of the time they predict it might snow. It never does, right? It's just flurries or it does nothing. But we don't know how to handle it. We can't drive. Like when that snow apocalypse happened, like everything shut down because we just don't know how to handle the snow. One of my best friends lives up in Toronto, Canada, and we were on the phone one day, and he was like, "What you doing?" And he was like, "I was like, I don't know, nothing. What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm going to get my winter tires." And I stopped for a minute. I was like, "You're what?" He's like, "My winter tires." I was like, "Come again?" He's like, "My winter tires." I was like, "Aren't tires just tires?" So apparently even up there they have something called winter tires. We don't have any winter tires down here. Like
no.
It's not
so y'all quit making fun of us up there. We don't have winter tires down here. Okay.
No, we don't. But I will say we could take the heat like a champ.
Yeah.
We know how to take the heat down here.
Our tires melt during the summer. We're okay with it. We can deal with it.
We can handle this. I mean, it's we just can't handle the snow. That's why we're called the Sun Belt down here. But when I saw that when the classes had canceled class, I was like, she is driving into a snowstorm that even the Yankees don't want to deal with. And for my friends watching from other countries, I know you call all Americans Yanks or Yankees, but here in the South, we call people from the North Yankees. We're not Yankees. We're not Yankees. Listen, my grandfather's grandparents were from Philadelphia, and we don't know anything about them. Well, I know about the grandmother because her family was actually from the English royal family, but the Staffords, the man she married, Henry Stafford, if you're a Stafford and lives in the Philadelphia area, hello, I might be your cousin. But we didn't learn anything about them because they were Yankees. How Southern is that, Jessica? We're not going to talk about that side of the family.
Typical.
It's typical.
Yeah, it's typical.
So, I just knew growing up, if I met anybody with the last name Stafford, I probably shouldn't be dating him. So, because I don't know how many cousins I got up there. But anyway, that is some serious business. So she is driving into a horrific snowstorm with a car that's not reliable. By 3:40 p.m., bank cameras show her withdrawing $280 from her account. Now, the bank camera footage finally was released. She was alone. There was nobody with her. They showed, I will probably place a picture here for you guys. Now, $280 did basically clear out her checking account. Now, $280 in 2004, if we look back 20 years, I think Jessica probably, if she was planning on going away just for the weekend, she probably in 2004 could have managed it at 20 years ago. And now $280 not gonna get you through one day. But then if she's living cheap, if she's, you know, as most college students do with gas, with everything. So I see that as her, yeah, I would think at that point that would be enough, sufficient if you were planning on going away for the weekend, which I'll tell you why my theory is about that later on. Later on, she stops by a liquor store where she spends $40 on booze. We also know that she did pick up the incident report that day at some point because they found it in the car when the car was found empty. They did find the incident. So she had gone and picked up the incident. These are important. This is important information, guys, because this shows somebody who was planning on coming back. And she was planning on staying in touch with her family. If she was picking up the incident report, she was planning on talking to her dad. This to me does not show someone, if she's turning in her nursing homework at 3:30 in the morning. Like if you're planning on disappearing, you wouldn't be turning in your nursing homework. Right? Like that's just common sense. So I think she was not planning on disappearing, right? But nobody knew she was leaving town or where she was going. 3:47 p.m. she checks her voicemail. And this is important because this pings. We know then between 4 and 5 p.m. she was heading north on I-91 because we know where she was heading at this point. And then we hear nothing from her until 7:27 p.m. when a call is made regarding her wreck. So she pulls off of I-91 into this very small town in New Hampshire, where she turns a corner and her car kind of skids. She probably hit ice. And from what I understand, where this was on Route 112, this area apparently was common for car accidents, for people just, especially when it was bad weather. So 7:27 p.m. a call is made by a neighbor regarding the wreck. Let's see. Then we have Butch Atwood, another neighbor who is a school bus driver. At 7:30, just 3 minutes later, he pulls his bus up going home and stops and talks to her and asks if she needs help. But she says, oh, no. I've called AAA. Don't worry. And he's like, let me call the police for you. And she's like, she pleads with him not to call the police. She assures him that she has called AAA. Well, Butch knew, as another neighbor, that area did not get cell phone reception. So he knew she was lying, that she had not called AAA. So he drives his bus to his house. By between 7:40 and 7:43, he places a call to the police himself. By 7:46, the police show up on the scene and she's gone. Her car is there. It's locked. When they realize it's a missing persons case and go into the car, they realize she's got her duffel bag with like clothes, workout clothes, makeup, all like she's going on a trip in the car. Obviously alcohol, spilled alcohol. They find the incident report, but her purse is missing and her cell phone. So the police figured that she actually left her car to either go and find cell phone reception to call a friend or find someone to help her. And that was the last. So theoretically, Butch Atwood was the last person to see her alive, or to see her in general. And there was a lot of speculation with Butch, but he has since passed away himself, and I think they pretty much cleared him because there were 3 neighbors around this. So there were 3, and I wrote down some people who've been very heavily investigated in this case gave the window for her to vanish to be about a 7-minute window. And for her, now they had, so all the different theories, guys, I'm just going to knock it out with what we know factually. She did not go into the mountains. Why do we know this? Because there were no footprints in the mountains at all. So the mountains were kind of on the side, and then she had the road going both directions. People think she might have ran into the mountains. No, guys. There were no footprints. Like with snow that much, if the cops had seen any footprints at that time at the scene, they would have actually gone and tried to, because it was cold. This was February 9th. It was freezing. There was no storm. They would have gone in to find the person. There was no indicators that she went into the woods. Now, when the police first thought she had vanished or got to the wreck and saw she wasn't there, they thought she vanished or she left voluntarily. Like she had just walked off to go and find cell phone reception. They didn't think anything scandalous had happened. I don't even think they were suspecting drunk driving, even though there was alcohol spilled at this point. I think they just thought she had left to go and try to find cell phone reception. So the police have acknowledged that they butched up. They messed up the first part of this investigation. It's a small town. It's a small town. You know, in Georgia, we got a lot of those, Jessica, don't we?
We do. Oh, yeah.
Cops don't deal with this stuff that much in small towns, do they?
Not often. I mean, I've dealt with cases where we had a very good family friend. My mom's best friend actually passed. We think he passed away in a fire up in Northwest Georgia. That's what we were told. But let's just say the detective work was shoddy. Okay, to say the least. And they had my mom and I searching through the rubble for his remains that were never found and stuff. So I know firsthand, okay, that I don't know if it was just being overwhelmed as a small department, but it took like 3 days or a couple of days to call in the GBI to come do the crime scene stuff. I mean, it was just botched, in my opinion. So they can't handle, some of these departments are just, the towns are so small, they can't handle it.
No, they don't have the resources. They don't have the training. It's and a lot of people have, put their and I'm a tinfoil hat wearer too sometimes. But with this, looking through everything, I don't think the police are covering anything up. Because we've had multiple police officers who were involved in that first call, apologize profusely for not, they kind of did, like, they drove around seeing if they could find her, but they kind of left, except they felt like she had walked off on her own and she would be back. They didn't think that anything was going on. And so they didn't call the FBI that quick. Like, they really just, and I feel bad for them, because you watch so many of these officers apologize profusely, realizing the mistake that they made. And so I don't think that, Fred Murray has filed a lawsuit against the New Hampshire police. They have withheld information from the police do apparently have more information they're willing to release to the public. I can understand both perspectives, why Fred Murray would sue, because the police have not been worked with him very well, the father. But from the police perspective, they need to hold back information, because when you do interrogations, there's information they have that only maybe a remote viewer or the perpetrator would have. And so they've held back some information regarding what they have found up until this point. So I don't think there was a police cover-up involved. I think it was just shoddy work. And I think that, they were understaffed, underfunded. And I could see them assuming listen, I've had to deal with the police. I have a stalker from Telegram, this cult on Telegram, and it's been really bad. And I've had to deal with the police, with police reports and detectives. And they also have a lot of red tape they have to get through. They're, the wheels of justice turn slowly. And a lot of that is because in this country, people are innocent till proven guilty. So when a police jurisdiction is ready to take a case to the prosecutor, they have to make sure they have everything to give the prosecutor that's going to convict this person, or else if they don't get the conviction, that's it. That's double. They can't do double jeopardy, So I kind of see both sides of this. I think it's just shoddy work. They've apologized. I think the police are trying their best at this moment to do what they can to help get some closure in this case. But anyway. A lot of people like James Renner believe that the family might be involved. I don't think so. Did you pick up on anything with the family being involved, Jessica?
No. I think that according to the data, and like after kind of analyzing it and now knowing what was going on and what happened and what this target was, I think that she was most likely picked up by somebody. She either waved a car down, she was picked up by somebody just to get out of there. Okay, to get out of there. She was tempted. Okay, I was picking up on somebody being tempted. I do believe she either was tempted, or she, attempted to flag somebody down and was like, hey, let me get a ride. But I think that was just a bad decision, because I think that she was taken and ultimately lost her life over that.
I agree with you. I don't think she went to Canada. I don't think it was suicide. People kept saying, oh, she went out and committed. I don't think so, because nothing from her behavior leading up to this moment indicated that she was planning on committing suicide. She was planning on coming back. You wouldn't send your nursing school homework in if you were not going to come, right? I mean, she did pack her dorm room up, like completely packed it up. So I think she was planning on being gone for a little while. My speculation, Jessica, and I said this in part one, where we don't know exactly why she was on that road because she didn't tell anybody, but she had a book in her car on hiking the White Mountains. So now she was at the foothills of the White Mountains. As a child, she used to go to the White Mountains with her family in the summertime to camp and hike. And so there were some words you said in the beginning, and the happiness, I can't remember all the words you said. And I thought, my speculation is she was overwhelmed. She had this lingering criminal charge. She had gotten into this wreck by the grace of God. She did not take a sobriety test. She had alcohol in her car. You said you think she was drinking. We still have I think she ran from the wreck because she wanted to sober up. She did not want to you can get into a car accident on probation. That's not the problem. The problem is, are you drunk driving? So I think she needed to get away from the accident. I think she was heading up to the White Mountains, and I think she was going to plan to try to stay there for the duration of the 3 months. That was her probational period, so that she didn't get any more trouble. And I think, and she only had $280 on her, but she could have probably gotten a part-time job. Something. I think she was removing herself from her school situation where there's a lot of alcohol, a lot of partying going on, to decompress for a moment. I think she also was stressed out with her boyfriend, and she got into this little fender bender. If she had been drinking, or if she was just stressed out about being in another car accident with this pending criminal investigation, I agree with you, Jessica. She went to get away, to either sober up or to get her wits about her, to call a friend to come help, because she did not want to be entangled with the police again, because that could have potentially put the credit card theft and identity theft on her record. And I agree with you. People said, well, why wouldn't she have then taken Butch, the older man's help? Well, Butch wanted to call the police, and she did not want the police involved. And I think you're right, Jessica. I think a younger person around her age pulled up, because the dogs they brought in dogs, guys. They brought the dogs. We don't deserve dogs. Dogs are they can sniff out anything. And they actually, there's lots of breakdowns on how they've worked these dogs. They've had cadaver dogs go into the woods to look for a dead body. They've never found anything of a human remains, by the car. Now they've only checked a certain radius around the car. It could be she's now outside of that radius. Her body is now outside of the area that was they were allowed to check. But the trace dog who picked up her living scent went from the area of the car where the car was crashed, like maybe 20 feet away down the road, and then it stops. So what does that tell you? She was picked up.
Yeah, I think she was picked up 100%. I think she was picked up.
Yeah,
that's what I think. And but I think she was picked up by somebody that was not a good person.
Yeah, and I think she saw it as a younger person. Now that some of the psychics picked up 3 men were involved. I don't know if one of his buddies like accidentally did. And you said if it was like I think she would have fought back. She was very athletic. She was 5'7". She was not tall, but like taller for a woman. She was, she could fight. I think this girl could definitely fight back. And I think that they started possibly drinking at his house. There's an A-framed house that they speculate she might have been taken to, which is about half a mile to a mile away. It's down a side road. So she would have died less than a mile from the accident if the theories are correct with this A-frame house. Some people did find blood once the tenants moved out and the house was empty. People were allowed to go in there, and they found blood in the closet. It has been it has shown that it is human blood, and the people that have forensically looked at the blood have found 2 different DNA samples. One they know is male, and one is undetermined. So that still leaves that door open that it could have been Maura in that closet. I think that they probably tried to sexually do something with her, and she said no and fought back, and it got out of hand. And maybe he called friends to remove the body. When you talked about the trance and being in a trance, I wrote that down, disassociation. Did she disassociate at some point, which is common in a traumatic experience. The sweating makes sense because your nervous system is working overdrive at that time when your life is being threatened.
Yes.
So, and yeah, I think now, according to locals do believe that it was what you said. That's what locals say. The gossip around town is exactly what Jessica picked up on.
Yeah. I could see that. I mean, that's really interesting. If if my data is on target and it's in agreement with what the locals assume or say, it's really sad. First of all, it's very sad. But I do believe. I mean, I was picking up on her getting dragged down and put. I literally heard somebody say she's put in her place. Okay, so that made me feel like, and she was knocked out as well. So I 100% believe that she was fighting. Okay, whatever happened to her, she was fighting, and whoever was attacking her felt like they had to put her in her place. They ended up knocking her out, and whether it was accidental or on purpose, I do believe that they harmed her, they injured her, ultimately to her death.
Yeah. And when you talked about the ritualistic stuff, now this is nothing against like the Islamic faith, because I have a friend who's Muslim. I'm not saying, all Muslims are this way. I kept thinking like this is coming from a different culture where, there is, and we know that in Islamic faith, they do practice a lot of occult. I mean, they do in the Christian faith too. There's a lot of occultic practices that go on as well. And, the interesting thing that I will say, Jessica, it's like, did you pick up on with whoever the perpetrator was, did you pick up on him having help to remove the body or to move the body?
No, I didn't. I felt like it was because I heard solemn or like alone. And so I was feeling as though either that was her or whoever picked her up. I was kind of picking up on like one person, honestly. But
Yeah.
Looking back at it, yeah, I think it was. I feel like it might have been just one person. Not to say there weren't more, but that's kind of what my sensory data was.
I kind of just common sense wise, I kind of questioned the three people too, because if you got three people involved in this, and this was considered, you guys, the first social media case, right? This because Facebook was invented the same week she went missing. And so there has been documentaries done over this girl, podcasts. I mean, this girl is now famous, basically. And so if three people are involved in this, what's the likelihood that one of them might have told someone else?
It's really high. Yeah, it would be a lot harder to get away with this and for this to be a cold case for so long had other people been involved. That's just the facts.
I thought the same thing. It had to have been one person, is my perception. Now there could have been, people could have picked up on other people being there because they could have had like a little house party where she was drinking at someone's house and other people were around, and the incident didn't happen until after everyone left, where he tried to, I think there was probably assault involved. I don't know if you picked up on that. I think he probably
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got dragged and abused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know,
and knocked out. Knocked out too.
She fought back. Good for her. And now, Jessica, does your spidey senses, do you think that this case, that her body will eventually be found?
I don't know. I can't say. I did not. Okay. When I'm given targets of missing persons, a lot of times by the end of that target, some of the data will suggest like where the body is or where it will be found. I did not pick up that here. So I can't say for sure. I didn't have any kind of acknowledgement of like finding a body or anything like that. Because like I said, I just had to set a number, so I didn't even know what I was looking at.
Right.
But no, I didn't pick that up.
I've had a big question mark about that too, because Appalachia, you guys, like this is the heart of Appalachia. How many people go missing in Appalachia just hiking and you never find their bodies? Because it is, we're talking about extreme elements of nature. We're talking about, I mean, wild animals digging up the remains. It's been 20 years. I know Alice Dubois said this case is very solvable. And again, we don't know what the police have. I know that the guy who owns the A-frame house at the time of her disappearance, his brother found a knife in the glove compartment with blood on it. At first, he tried to turn it into the police department. They turned it down, and he tried again. They took it, but nothing has ever come out about their findings forensically on that knife. They've never released it to the public. They won't acknowledge it to the public. Part of me feels like that maybe they did find something on a hit on that knife, and they are not going to release it because of the sensitivity of this investigation. But I don't know. So, do you think, Jessica, that her soul is at rest, or do you think her soul is still?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that, I didn't make direct contact with her. Okay. I mean, I was seeing things through her eyes, but I never did a deep mind probe on her, because I was, I didn't do a deep mind probe on her because it was so emotional. This target was so emotional, and I was playing out, there were all these scenarios like playing out in my head and stuff. And so, I mean, I could always go back and we can hit this target again one day and try to make contact with her and find out. Now that I know what the target is, do a little front loaded target on it and try to contact her, or just get in her head and find out what happened.
That's the most important part. We want that soul to be at rest. If the body is gone, we want the soul to move on and to be at rest and be at peace with what happened, the trauma that, and I will say, I will reiterate again, you guys, and I know that's really hard for family members and friends to hear, because Alison Dubois said the same thing, like, is the family going to see this? Because it just makes me emotional, because obviously her death was not a fun one. It was not, there was obviously a lot of trauma involved. And it sounds like maybe when she did get knocked out, that was a blessing, because then she wasn't conscious for the rest of whatever happened to her that night. And I feel bad for her, because she was so obviously so stressed out at this time in her life, and she was trying to course correct. I talked about in my episode, my deep dive, there were speculations of her having an eating disorder, which I've said before, I said this deep dive, many athletes have eating disorders because it's a type of control. And when I guess you would probably know this as a dancer, Jessica, when you feel lighter in your stomach, you're able to have more control over your body. We see this in the yoga world a lot. There are a lot of colleagues I have in Ashtanga that I know have eating disorders. It's a need to control, but not from the same place that people who aren't athletes and develop this type of disorder. So we know there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress in her mind, and a lot of in a lot of ways I think she felt like things were unraveling, which, looking back, if that had happened to her at 40, she probably would have just been like, thank you, judge, I'm just going to sit at my home for 3 months and go to school and not be tempted by parties in order to get this off my record. But being even though she was 21, she's technically adult. Your frontal brain isn't developed until like 25. She was still, for all intent and purposes, a kid, and it's so sad. And it just shows you how in a split second, one decision we make could like change the trajectory of everything. And I think she was up in that area because of the stress in her life, but I don't think the person who killed her had anything to do with what was actually going on in her life. Right?
Yeah. I mean, my take on it would be like a complete stranger to her.
Well, you guys, it's a very heartbreaking case. And if you have not, again, if you're watching this and you don't know anything about Maura Murray's case, I have my part 1. I'll put that in the description box below. And there are so many documentaries out there. Maggie Furling did a great docuseries on this case, and there's the Missing Maura Murray podcast. I would love, Jessica, I would actually really like, have you ever been up to New England, to that area?
I mean, well, I was just in New York. I don't know if that counts. So
City or state?
Yeah, no, I have not been to like Massachusetts or Connecticut or any of those states. No.
I've been up there. It's not my favorite place in the world. No offense to our friends who are from New England. I've been in Connecticut, Massachusetts. It's there's like a different feeling up there than down here in the southeast. it's a lot of very, very small towns, smaller than some of our towns down here in the South. And I mean, I would be curious, Jessica, to go up there, or if you would ever want to go up there ourselves to this area and see where she had the accident. They have it marked off now. There's constantly a bow around it. People are constantly going up there, and to see, you know, because she is right. She's like 90 miles or something from the Canadian border. She is very close to the Canadian border, but just to kind of get a, you know, and I guess what I'm trying to say is this area. We've said it before, man versus Appalachia. Appalachia is always going to win. Like, it's a rough area. It's rough. You know, if you get stuck in those woods, her body, you know, it's anyway. It's yeah.
Well, you know, okay, just to tie this in, I know this has nothing to do with Sasquatch and Bigfoot, but you know, I did state at the beginning of the show that I am ultimately a Bigfoot field researcher. Okay, and that's how I learned remote viewing, was through my team. And I'm often asked, like, why have you guys never found a body of a Bigfoot? Well, there's a lot of different reasons for that. And anything, and I do a lot of my research in the Appalachian Mountains. And that some of the guys on my team have actually been to the body farm in Tennessee and done a lot of work there. And that's where they put the bodies out to study the decomposition of bodies. Okay. And bodies, they disintegrate quickly. Okay. Yeah. A lot of them. And there's scavengers out there, like animals. There's a lot of times, like, you don't ever see a dead bear in the woods and things like that, because they disappear so rapidly with those decomposition rates, especially in the, you know, like in the Appalachians in Georgia. That's the Chattahoochee National Forest is like a rainforest. I mean, literally. And so it's very humid up there. And so nothing sticks around for very long once it's passed away in the woods.
That's a good point too, because when bodies die in civilization and they take them into a funeral parlor, they inject certain chemicals into the body to preserve it a little bit longer in order to have open caskets. But when you don't have any of that and the body's just dumped, it is probably going to disintegrate pretty quickly. And that could have been some of the odor you were smelling too. I thought about that, Jessica, when you said the odor, not only the sweat from the trauma, but, you know, apparently when you first die, your bowels release. You know, there's a lot of smells that come off the body because the organs start to shut down. You know, it's why death smells so bad. You see people having to put like either stuff under their lip when they go to a morgue or cover their nose, because it's just such I've never smelt a dead human body, but I've obviously smelt dead animal bodies out in the woods, and it is a gnarly smell, you know, so when that life leaves the body. So yeah, it is. I feel my heart just goes out to all of her family, to her father and her siblings, and to have that knowledge. Again, they are very accepting. It seems that they're realistic that she's probably dead. And they think foul play fell upon her, and I think so too. And so, and like I said, I don't think James Renner is a bad dude for thinking that she's living some life up in Canada. I think that's the natural response for human beings, to want to think that somebody is alive and well and happy. But I just don't think that's the case at all. So I think it just was happenstance that she was close to the Canadian border. I don't think it was anything else but that. So, well, thank you for doing this, Jessica. If y'all want, we'll do. I just gave Jessica targets for a new case for Gnostic TV. But if you guys want us to like do more missing people cases, especially cold cases, let us know. Give me some names. Because I don't remote view, so give me the name. I'll do the research into what we know about the case, and then I'll give Jessica the coordinates so she can get what she knows about the case. So, anything else you want to close out with today, Jessica? Where can people find you? Where can people?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me today. This has been a very interesting case, and I think it's pretty cool that I actually feel like this data was pretty on target. Okay, for whatever happened, I do believe. Now, people can find me at thecryptidhuntress.com. All my shows are there. I'm actually, I have a YouTube channel called The Cryptid Huntress, and where I do live shows all week. And I'm also a host at Spaced Out Radio every weekend, Saturday and Sunday night. You guys can find all my shows there. But yeah, mostly just all over social media and stuff. I'm the Cryptid Huntress. So thank you for having me today.
Of course. And I have to say, I think I was talking to someone about you off camera. I can't remember if it was off camera or on camera, but I was like, How badass is the name Jessica Jones for what you do? To be a cryptid huntress, to have the name Jessica Jones, it was like Dharmic. I feel like Jessica Jones, cryptid huntress. Like, it's just so badass. I was
Oh
like,
my God.
it is a perfect name for a woman who's going to be doing what you do. You guys, I will put all of those links down in the description box below. I know somebody actually commented the other day, who is that girl you were talking about that does the remote viewing? And I just wrote the cryptid huntress. Go look her up. She's awesome. So, and you'll be doing, guys, this is obviously, I plan on doing a lot with Jessica. We want to do some locational stuff too. And so just let us know, you guys, if there's a really interesting case that you want us to, it doesn't have to be a missing persons case either, guys. Like, we did the Bell Witch on Gnostic TV. I've got another case on Gnostic TV that Jessica's going to be doing that's not necessarily missing persons, not necessarily. So it can be just any strange, weird stuff you want us to look into. I can do the research and then I can give Jessica the coordinates. Just let us know. And we'll figure out, as Ram Dass says, we're all just walking each other home. So we're just going to walk each other home together. Even if we don't know quite the directions, well, we're going to try to figure it out. So anyway, guys, well, I hope you guys are having a wonderful start to your Thursday. This is going to be airing on Thursday. And yeah, let us know your thoughts and your theories down in the comment section below. Bye, everybody.